going to talk about tonight is a book I wrote about a year and a half ago. And I have talked about this before. It's called I'm terrible at titles. Georgetown at the Turn of the Millennium. That's because my first book was called Teaching at the Turn of the Century. I'd already said century once, so I went with millennium. Because it was a big deal. Y2K, Y2K1, I don't care which one is real, I know it's Y2K1.
It's been about a year.
I like numbers. So I use that for my title. But there's a particular reason I decided to talk about this one again tonight, because one of the articles in this, and if you have this book, you know that it's a collection of articles I used to write for the Georgetown Record. And one of the articles that I wrote was about elders, and we're going to kind of focus on elders tonight. So I'm going to read this article to you. It's not very long. It's just a newspaper column long. You may not see them. They sit behind their old windows, watching their quiet neighborhoods, listening long to the clock's tick-tock, hoping their telephone might ring, their doorbell might chime, might announce a welcome visitor, remembering favorite stories, forgotten names, planning a wonderful retelling, lacking only a listener, an audience, a little company. Our town has a growing population of experienced citizens. People who can share their hard-earned wisdom, can share a sense of calm and confidence with today's hurried and harried generations. They have watched so much of history. They have lived fully every bit of it, gaining skills and knowledge through each changing decade, learning love, acceptance, and courage through all of their trials and triumphs. Their calm and their confidence has grown with them, gaining strength with each pressing decade. Their perspectives have broadened more than one can imagine. We have among us survivors of 2 world wars, the fearful Cold War, several international conflicts, the Great Depression, the repeating recessions, the rationing of the 40s through the booming 50s, and the erratic 60s. They are the great-grandparents who were children in their 20s and 30s, and then raised their own then raised their own large families, guiding their children, their grandchildren, those generations who ate white bread and bought penny candy and grew round and visited the dentist occasionally. Their great-grandchildren today eat wheat bread. They choose sugar-free gum. They have coaches and trainers, and they stay thinner, but they visit the dentist and the orthodontist. Not much can surprise them. They have truly seen it all. They have watched the main streets widen, harden, fill with traffic, debated and agreed to install traffic lights, allowed their children to cross safely when the red and yellow lights were lit, watched Logan Airport, Cape Canaveral develop, watched computers begin large and expensive, and then grow smaller, cheaper, and more powerful, watched trains move underground and then back out again, watched the cities fill in times of plenty and then empty when times were hard. They learned to read and do sums, or they left school, and in a world where a non-reader could still have a career and support a family. They wrote letters in beautiful penmanship, sharing thoughtful, well-planned messages, and they waited patiently for carefully crafted responses. They often worked all their lives for one company, but now in their telephone diaries, they watch their families' work addresses change before the decade does. Some of our elders have lived in town all of their lives, but many came as young adults, moving to start a new generation away from the cities. The 2 ponds in town attracted summer visitors, and in time, those summer camps became year-round homes. One was a summer community, the Lake Shores Improvement Association. They built a clubhouse for their neighborhood gatherings, and in their day, the city neighborhoods were as familiar, safe, and friendly as our town streets are today. They knew how to protect that safe environment. They gathered on stoops and shared stories and wisdoms in the evenings, and they knew each other's children and families, and many of their children were the citizens who winterized those camps and lived year-round, raising a new generation among their own friends. Here now, Elders want to know their town neighbors, to know the children. They want to help our gardens grow, and our children grow, and our families grow. They can predict which plants will thrive in our landscape. They learned by doing, year after year, and which will fail, but be replaced with others. They are our town's most precious, valuable resource, often untapped, unrecognized, forgotten. They want to share their time with us. They still have much more than time to share. This winter brought very little required exercise from most of us. I wrote this book in 1999, I think I wrote this book.
We're there again.
With not much snow to shovel, little ice to sand, fewer fallen branches to cut and gather for the woodpile, but still families have been busy, rushing around, doing as much as possible for the children of our town. And soon the gardens will be planted, then kept. But as our days again grow longer, we have a bit more to do. We have visits to make, phones to call, notes to write. They are here. They enrich our neighborhoods, our community, our lives. We can't waste any more time. We have so much to gain from the elders, and so very much to lose. Yes, they still have things to tell us. And so I wrote that because I'm going to talk about Henry and Helen tonight. But before I do, I came up with a sequel to my original book, which is a memoir, but most of you read and called it a love story of Rick. This is its sequel. A lot of people on Facebook asked me to write a sequel. They wanted to know what happened after the end of this book. After I discarded the diagnosis of multiple sclerosis, I rejected the prescription of the pharmacological cure for it, and I went with a more natural approach to it, and how my life has turned out since then. And it's been, as Lynn would call it, a very interesting journey. So I wrote the sequel to talk about that. And what happened was, the title of the sequel is Multiple Sclerosis, Melanoma, and More. While I was down in Bethesda, Maryland, being part of a Parkinson's research clinical study, because both of my parents had Parkinson's disease. And the doctor down there, Dr. Goldstein, was recruiting people who had Parkinson's in the family, people who did not have Parkinson's in the family, people who expected to have Parkinson's but didn't have it yet. That was me. My argument with the neurologist when he was diagnosing me with multiple sclerosis was, I never heard that nobody in my family has it, and I think this is Parkinson's. Well, as it turned out, by going through the study, it is not Parkinson's, they say, yet. They don't know what's ahead. But I was helpful to them in terms of being a normal control person in their study, and I said, wow, I haven't been considered normal in a long time.
This is a good thing.
So that was really exciting for me. But while I was there on one of my visits, the nurse practitioner that worked with me, who was a lieutenant corporal in the United States Navy, she was a striking, beautiful black woman, probably 30, 35 years old, a nurse practitioner and a lieutenant corporal in the Navy. I was blown away to have someone like that sitting in an office and talking with me. I felt so privileged to have her take an interest in my health. And she was fabulous. And she took an interest in me as a whole person. And she wanted to know any concerns that I had. And she wanted to know what that spot was on my leg that was kind of looked crusty and a little bit bloody. And so I told her I'd had that for a while, and I thought that it had been like a hornet bite that got infected and hadn't gone away, and I'd had it for about a year. So she said that her second love was dermatology, and that I should get me to a dermatologist as soon as I got home. And so I did. And I went to a dermatologist. I had to wait a month for the appointment because they're very overbooked. A lot of people are really looking at their skin conditions now, which is good, positive. And I got to see him, and he's in Brighton, and he said to me, I see some spots that I want to biopsy. And I said, okay, well, the nurse practitioner in Bethesda said she was concerned and thought there should be biopsy. And when he biopsied, they came back on one site on my back as being malignant melanoma. The site on my leg, which I had been concerned about, was basal cell carcinoma. And I found out in a later visit that a site on my other leg was squamous cell cancer. So I have won the jackpot, as he said. I have all three skin cancers, and he said that's not very typical. I think it's a 7% of the population that would have all three. And he said, but it can be treated. It can all be treated surgically, so I want you to go to see a surgeon. I didn't know that. I thought dermatologists were their own surgeons. They're not. They do the diagnosing. They send you to a surgeon to do the treatment. So I went to a surgeon, and I'll read you that section of the book. Meet the surgeon. That Monday, we left the house at 5:30 a.m. I saw the surgeon, Dr. Walker, as his first patient of the day. Promptly at 7 a.m., he explained that he would take a small excision of tissue, removing enough but not too much, and send the tissues out for biopsy. The two basal carcinoma sites could be biopsied right there in the office. There was one on my shoulder and one on my leg. The other one was my back. They could be done right in the office, but the malignant melanoma would have to culture overnight. So he would do the melanoma first, and the basal could wait until the melanoma had been addressed. I agreed, and he began to cut for the melanoma. Unfortunately, biopsy was confusingly misreported, and it led him to believe that the site that was melanoma was on my shoulder, which actually was basal. He showed me the report afterward, and I agreed that it had misled him to my right back, which he assumed was my right shoulder, which was irritated and nasty looking. When he realized the report's error, he read the results of that shoulder's tissue as basal cell carcinoma, and he was satisfied that it was now clear, and so he sutured it. He then cut into the tissue at my left back, which did not look as serious. It simply had a flat red marking like a simple sunburn. Nothing was raised, nothing was scabbing. He sent that tissue out for culturing. He apologized profusely for the confusion, assuring me that the shoulder would heal with only a small white scar. We joked about his black suture stitches, and I told him I was a quilter, and he would probably not use black on such, I would probably not use black on such a pale fabric as my skin. He said he would have to take special care to align his stitches neatly on me. His assistant covered the small open wound on my back with a dressing, and they sent me home with a precautionary prescription for an antibiotic as the wound was left open. So he didn't suture this because it was melanoma. I had one set of directions for caring for the shoulder sutures, and I was told to do nothing with the open wound, as I would be back in the office in 2 days. Rick drove us home, and as I talked with him about the surgery, I was sitting up on a raised bed, recliner, I guess, and it looked like it would go back down in the back, but Dr. Walker's assistant, Philippe, he did angle that away a little bit so that he could work on my back, but I never thought I would have skin surgery sitting up. But the doctor seemed comfortable working that way, and Philippe covered my shoulder with steri pads and bandages, and that's where the stitches would be. And I'm not sure that my skin won't react to those bandages like my dad's used to. And I have care directions for both of the sites, and I have a prescription to pick up for an antibiotic, and oh, I wish he had let you come in with me. It's okay, Rick responded, when I finally stopped the tumbling stream of words to take breath. We can look at the papers when we get home. We'll stop at CVS, pick up the prescription. And he kept his eyes on the city traffic as our OnStar navigator guided him through the city streets. That went on for almost a week. The wound was left open for almost a week. It was a week because I went back the next Monday and finally had clear margins on that very meticulous surgery. He took as little as he could take each time and checked for more melanoma sites or cells. And when it was finally clear, he could suture it up. But it was quite large by the time he finished, and he stitched it up with his black stitches in the shape of a Z. because he had cut a small hole the first time, and the next time he went in to try to get clear margins, and the hole got bigger. And the hole was about this big by the time he finished it. And so to close a hole on your skin, if they're not getting a skin graft, I had plenty of skin. If you remember reading this book, I had lost 50 pounds in this book. So I had plenty of skin. So what he did was, he had Philippe take his big, massive hands and smoosh this together, and literally sewed it together as a Z. So I call it my Mark of Zorro. I never have to have a tattoo. I have an original. It's mine. So the melanoma was treated, but it came back. And it came back on my arm. It was a totally different site. And so they call that a recurrent malignant melanoma, which put me on a 3-month schedule of seeing the dermatologist. And the dermatologist checks each time. If he finds a basal, or he finds a squamous, or he finds a melanoma, he'll send me back to the surgeon to have it excised or removed. And so I've been doing that now for 2 years, and I've had maybe 12 biopsies and I think 8 surgeries in all. And I will do that for the rest of my life until he reaches a point where I go a full year without any surgery needed. Then he will tell me it's no longer recurrent, and then I can go to like a 6-month checkup schedule. So all of that is talked about in this book. And I do give some resources through the book as to sites and websites that you can go to collect more information. But this is something that also ties into being in my 60s. As we get older, things show up. Things that we, I don't want to say contracted because it's not contagious, but things that we made possible in our childhood. And as a child living in South Boston with the Atlantic Ocean right at the foot of my street practically, we were on the beach every day. And there was no wonderful SPF 30 in the 1950s. They had sunblock, but it was to attract the sun. They had baby oil with iodine, and it was to attract the sun. They had aluminum foil so that you could get all that burn right down onto your neck, so you could attract the sun and have a beautiful tan. I never tanned. I burned, peeled, and freckled. That was it. That's all I did. And now I have melanoma. But, and this goes back to the first book, there's a part of me that believes that the reason melanoma bloomed when it did was because for 4 years I took those injections for multiple sclerosis, whose purpose it was to weaken my immune system. And with a weakened immune system, cancer cells have a field day in the body. So that melanoma has probably been there since childhood, but it was dormant. It wasn't acting out, it wasn't blooming, it wasn't spreading. It hasn't spread. I'm very fortunate it has not metastasized, as the word they use, when melanoma spreads, usually to a liver, brain, or some other significant organ.
Terry, why did they take a small kind of
There's a doctor in Boston, and his name is Dr. Moe, M-O-H. She's Oriental. He is Oriental. And it's called Moe surgery. And they try to be very conservative. They try to take as little skin tissue as they can, so they're not interrupting the normal cell growth of healthy cells. And so by scraping and shaving, it's really shaving that they do, they read the biopsies, and the biopsies come back, and they make a map as they send the tissue out. And the biopsies come back, and it says, in the 4th quadrant, which is usually the, I don't know, they read it as up, I read it as down, because he's looking up and I'm looking down. But they identify where there is still a malignant cell seen. What they can't guarantee is that they get all of the cells, because it's cellular, it's minute, it's microscopic. They do the best they can, and the more they get, the less can grow. There is chemotherapy that they can use. I wouldn't go for it. I'm not in favor of chemotherapy, because chemotherapy damages as many or more healthy cells as it does cancer cells. And so I'm a coward in that sense. I wouldn't play that. I wouldn't roll the dice with that at all. And yet I know people who have had chemotherapy and have had success with it. And I congratulate their courage in allowing doctors to do that. I'm not very liberal in that sense, I guess. But it's something that at some point, if this continued to bloom and bloom and bloom, then I would have to consider it, or just continue to have ongoing surgeries. And that's something that older people have to think about, and so we do. Which brings me to my current book. So this is called Quilter's Quarters, and it's Quilter's singular, because this is really about Helen's quilt shop. And Helen is a character that was in my head, and, excuse me, until I went to the Boston Christmas Festival. And Rick and I go each year, and we have a wonderful time walking around looking at all of the crafters who are there. And we came upon these two dolls. And I said to Rick, oh my God, that's Helen and Henry. That's who I'm writing about. And we walked over and we talked to the woman who made the dolls. They are ceramic. I mean, their shoes, their socks. Forgive me, Helen. Helen's rolled up stockings at the end of the day. They're very appropriate for aged dolls. And so I have Helen and Henry with me in my quilt shop. This book is really a projection of where I see Rick and I in about 15 years when we're in our 80s. And so I named Helen after my Aunt Helen, who was very good to me. And I named Henry after Rick's Uncle Henry, who lived next door to Rick for a while and was good to him. Helen and Henry never met in real life, but they would have been a fantastic pair if they had. They were both happily married to other people who had nothing to do with my story. So Helen has a quilt shop, and this is something that I wanted to do for a long time and didn't know that I wanted to do. It was kind of a daydream. I like to quilt. I wished I could buy fabric inexpensively. If I had my own shop, I could. I could set prices. I could get fabric from a warehouse. And now I can. I do. When I retired at the end of this book, I wouldn't have given 2 cents for me. I was done. I felt I was used up. I was disappointed in myself. I was disappointed in the medication that I had allowed myself to be talked into. I felt it has done much more harm, no good at all. I have been diagnosed with relapsing remitting multiple sclerosis. I don't relapse. I don't have symptoms that come, devastate me, and then miraculously go away. I don't live that life. I feel for people who really do have that. And I understand why they continue to reach for the pharmacological cure for that, or at least treatment for that. But the injection that I was taking for that said nothing about alleviating symptoms. And the symptoms that people who relapse have might be, they might wake up blind one day. They might wake up without any hearing one day. They might wake up having lost anything that their central nervous system has to do with. It can be anything. I lived with that fear for 4 years. I believed that diagnosis for 4 years. It devastated me. It wiped me out in terms of confidence. You can't be a teacher if you're not confident. It wiped me out in terms of organization and my ability to listen to 25 channels at once, which is what a classroom teacher has to do. I couldn't concentrate on my kids. I couldn't remember their names. I couldn't write progress reports on kids if I was going to mix them up. And so I had to retire. And I was truly devastated. I had spent my life becoming a teacher. I taught well for 30 years. Well, 20 years. The last 2 years, I tried my hardest. But I know I wasn't as good as I was for the first 28. I know I wasn't. And I worked with wonderful people who helped me cope and manage. But I wasn't me. And MS, the diagnosis of MS and the treatment for MS was painful. It was humiliating. I had to inject in 7 different body sites through the 7 days of the week. Rick had to help me with some of them because I couldn't reach them physically. It undid me, and I finally stopped. I said, I've had it. I have to retire. This was supposed to slow the progression of MS. It's made it worse. Why am I still taking this? It's made me worse. I've lost my career. This is why I took this medication. I thought it would help me reach the magic 32 years. That's when a teacher can retire saying, I nailed it. And I almost nailed it. But I didn't nail it. And the medication became the target for my anger. And so I stopped taking it. And I went natural. I went through a better menu. I don't call it a diet because diets are so temporary and people yo-yo on diet. I call it a menu change. And I am healthier for it. I'm stronger for it. And I am so much happier for it because I kind of did this to the medication. I'm doing fine without it. And I've regained a lot of the confidence that I had to the point where in my mid-60s, I have opened my own quilt shop. And so I wrote another book, because that's what I do. So here's my book, and it's about Helen and Henry. And Helen and Henry are now 81 years old. They've been married for 61 years. They have a couple of kids. They don't play much of a role in the first two books, but they will emerge as the series of books go on. So I'll read you a little bit of Helen. The quilt shop had been an idle thought for many years. As many years as had lapsed since the closure of the 5 and 10 downtown. Once, people could find last-minute supplies for their knitting and sewing projects in the store that was known for having just about everything. When it closed its doors, people found that they would have to travel to a mall or find another small town and another shop there for their essentials. Running a small business in competition with large chain stores was becoming harder and harder in a weakened economy. Running a quilt shop was no guarantee of an income either, but this man and his wife were retired, with a pension, with a home nearly paid for. It was a good time to begin building that inventory. It would take either time or borrowed money. Neither of them wanted to borrow any more than they could quickly pay back. It was a mindset they had inherited from their parents. It was the old American dream, the one in which a couple worked hard, raised their kids, sent them to college, paid their bills, and then retired, snug in their home. It was a dream that they held to dearly and planned to fulfill. Rather than traveling all around the country as they once thought they might, they would instead stay home and invite the country to visit their shop. Wouldn't it be lovely, the wife often thought to herself, to be able to retire before health began to decline, to be able to enjoy the freedom of her own schedule, uncluttered by doctor's appointments. They say youth is wasted on the young, but perhaps they have that wrong. Perhaps retirement is wasted on elders. It seems backwards to pension off the people who have patiently gathered enough knowledge and skill to do most jobs well. Retirement, as portrayed in the media, almost demands a healthy, vigorous strength and organized yet flexible spontaneity that would accommodate sudden vacation opportunities, sentimental anniversary surprises. How naive to think that travel plans could be realized in later years and put them off. Quilt shop is something that the townspeople will want to visit, will find it easy to get to, local, dependable in providing what needleworkers of all sorts need. The shop will have a regular schedule. Some daylight, some early evenings to accommodate those who hold jobs out of town. Just 10 steps door to door for the two of us. No need to drive on icy roads. No worry about grading children or training new workers. Each of us will be able to work at our own pace, to our own standards, and with people that we will enjoy seeing. Yep, the wife thought, this is the right path for this leg of life's journey. To be safe and productive, to be together, to be home happily ever after. She went to the barn, and she was surprised to find a person standing on the other side of the open door. That's the beginning of Helen's mystery and shine. A little bit about Henry. The front of the barn was still an original building, and they estimated it to be at least 100 years old, and perhaps older. The dark beams were exposed along the ceiling, supporting the second floor that was still primarily being used as what the man's mother would call a hidey hole. Their plan was to empty the forgotten clutter out and brighten the space with a new wallboard and create a quilting classroom, but it would have to wait a while longer. Right now, they're in transition. What had once been the wooden toy and gift shop was now diversifying into the wooden toy and gift shop and thoughts and threads. The wooden trucks and Christmas ornaments and the holiday carousels now shared space with his wife's quilts and her growing collection of self-published books. And soon, bolts of fabric and shelves of sewing notions would take more space from each of those. Everyone who saw the wooden toys that the man made admired them, and many would strike up a conversation about how kids' toys today were all made of plastic, and they took batteries, and they were too complicated electronically to fix them when they broke. Yep, everyone saw the value of making wooden toys safely, right here in the USA, rather than importing them cheaply from foreign markets. Yes, 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 they would say, and they would walk away, smiling at the conversation and memories, but shy of the price of good wood and honest labor. Toys were more an impulse item for most adults, bought quickly in a mad dash through the mall, chosen by a brand name or a low price. The wooden toy maker was a nice person, but his prices were higher in China. So the quilt shop will ideally invite more people, a different clientele than just parents.